much more to talk about with these three, Dan Mitchell, Joe Walsh, and Scott Bolton, because I know that you have comments on this. Joe, I do want to start with you first because the mechanics of this is interesting. You know, do we really want to deal with a government shutdown Friday night into Saturday when you've got these other fights going on Capitol Hill?
Hey, Cheryl, it's a fair question. In Congress, I lived through these government shutdown battles. And the thing I always noticed is the Democrats are always eager to shut down the government. They're willing to do it, and the Republicans are always afraid to, which is why the Democrats can always roll the Republicans on these things, like they rolled Boehner, like they rolled Paul Ryan, and like we saw yesterday, they sort of rolled Donald Trump because he took his money for the wall away and didn't insist upon that. Look, they'll sign something and kick the can down the road a little bit, and we'll continue to spend money we don't have because, Cheryl, as you said, the Republicans don't want to fight right now on this.
Well, because, Dan, they've got a lot more fights coming up, but this is the next, battle that we're going to see, Dan, if you will. I mean, how do you score this?
Well, I think what you said before is exactly right. If you're a Republican congressman or congresswoman and you're thinking about what's good for the country, this fight over shutting down the government and whether or not you're adjusting, tweaking some number here or there, that's relatively trivial compared to somehow getting the albatross of Obamacare off the back of the economy. And then also now there's all this excitement about can we actually get a good tax cut to get the economy growing at 3% rather than 2%. So I understand why the shutdown fight, the spending fight has sort of receded into the background. From my perspective, I always liked government shutdowns. It bothered me when they reopened it.
Because just more red tape, which is never much fun. That's
Amen.
Good.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Scott, if you agree with that. Maybe you do. But I have to say, I'm curious what you thought about President Trump backing away from his insistence that some type of border adjustment funding would come through with the, he was going to ask for money for the border, the wall, if you will. He backed off of that. I'm wondering what the reaction is.
Well, of course he backed off of it because he makes life difficult for the Republicans and the Democrats. And, Joe, I must tell you, the only people that roll Republican leadership in the White House are Republicans. They're the majority of the House and Senate, and they have the White House, and they still cannot have or pass any legislative victories. They are their own worst enemies here. I think the taking the border wall money out was a smart thing to do because the Republicans have all the exposure here since they're in control. If they shut the government down, not the Democrats, but they shut the government down because of this border wall that is going to cost something like $40 billion at last check, and it makes absolutely no sense. There's a deal to be had on border security, I think, but the whole idea of the border wall, that's a campaign promise that has zero empirical data to support that that's going to stop gangs like MS-13 or other illegal immigrants from coming into this country who want the American dream, not to commit crimes.
But, Joe, the challenge the president also has, Joe, is, frankly, there are a lot of Republicans, both on the House and the Senate side, from border states that aren't really behind the wall. I've even heard agents say, ICE agents in particular, say they don't want a wall because they can't see through a wall. I mean, simple things like this are becoming part of the discussion, Joe.
Yeah, Cheryl, the problem is this was Trump's central campaign promise, and his voters want it. A lot of people want it. But to my friend's point, he's right. Look, the Republican Party, Trump's biggest problem is the Republican Party is divided. They're divided on Obamacare. They're going to be divided on his tax plan, and they are divided on the wall, which, again, I go to this. Donald Trump has to grab these Republicans and shake them up and remind them, again, Cheryl, pick your body part,
I shake them
but
too.
remind them that they're in charge.
Okay, I don't want to hear about body parts again, but I will say this, Dan. I will say this. It's true. I mean, if the Republicans don't come together on something, and a lot of investors hope it's tax reform. I mean, they can't block it like they did Obamacare. But if they can come together on tax reform, that would give political muster back to the president. And it seems to me from what I heard today in the White House, game on with tax reform. They're going to fight.
There are two big things they have to do this year. They somehow have to do something that they can call Obamacare repeal. They might not really fully do it, but at least they can call it that. If they don't do that, they're in trouble with their base. And if they don't deliver a tax cut, they're in trouble simply because our economy will continue to sort of sluggish, anemic, European-style growth. And guess what? That comes back to bite Republicans in the you-know-what in 2018 and then Trump in 2020. So it's in their self-interest to do what's actually good for the country, which is lift the burden of government off the private sector so we can be like America again.
Well, I think I better end the segment before we get an FCC violation out of the show, which isn't even mine. I'm just filling in. Dan, Joe, Scott, guys, thank you so much. It's great to have you on.
Thank you.